This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache and you don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR. I'm your host, Louise Fraser, and today I am delighted to introduce our guest onto the show. I have with us today Aleksandra Kucza, who is a Senior Global HR Director at ACAMS, which is the world's largest organization for anti-crime professionals. She spent nearly 8 years scaling people strategy across a fully distributed remote-first workforce spanning the US, Europe, and beyond. And before ACAMS, she built global talent functions at Laureate International Universities and Vistaprint, and she's also a trained executive coach. So lots on that list. And today we're going to be talking about talent reviews in a remote world, why they matter, how to run them when your people are scattered across the globe, and what happens when proximity bias creeps in. So welcome to the show, Aleksandra.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much, Louise, for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
No problem at all. So I think we'll kick off with a nice, easy question. I'm really interested to understand what made you want to come on and talk about talent reviews in the first place.
And before we go there, Louise, I just need to say that my company's lawyers make me say that these views are my own and they do not necessarily represent the views of ACAMS. Why I decided to come on the show and talk about talent reviews. When you reached out, I was thinking, what we could talk about. There's so much in HR to talk about, right? And I thought, as much as I love my job, all of it, definitely talent and talent development is the area that is one of my favorites. And I think it's because I truly believe that a talent review done right can be truly transformational for the people that we are reviewing, but also through them for the company. And at least in my book, talent review really is one of the most important business processes out there.
Amazing. And I think we're going to get into the pros and cons and the do's and don'ts over the session today. But for those who may know less about talent reviews or those who might be skeptical, let's start by organizing some descriptions. How would you describe a talent review process? What is it?
To somebody who doesn't really know what that is, right? It really is gathering a group of leaders in one place and having a good old chat about their people, as simple as that. Seriously, it is about getting leaders together and talking about their people, talking about the strengths, talking about the gaps, talking about their career aspirations as well, talking about what might happen if they leave, and talking about what the organization should look like, how to have the right people in the right place at the right time, and then based on those conversations, building action plans of, implementing.
I love that. I'm a big believer in the importance of having talent conversations. So you don't have to persuade me today, but if you are, I'm sure in your time in working with various senior leadership teams, there has been those that have been potentially skeptical towards the talent review process. What's your go-to persuasion technique or the way that you would try and convince the importance of a talent review to a senior leader?
I think having a conversation about what really makes or breaks their teams, what really impacts their performance of their teams, what really impacts the bottom line that they are responsible for. And when you start having that conversation, you eventually always get to a point where a leader would say, yeah, it depends on this person in this role, or this is the person that had this wonderful idea and we implemented it, and now we are better because of it, right? So it's trying to drive the conversation to the impact that people can have, and really to make leaders understand that there's a big difference between having, a star performer in a particular role and a mediocre performer in a key role, and how big of a difference it can be on the business. And I think when they put it together, when they realize it, then it's easy to talk about, okay, we need to have a structured conversation about this. You need to invest some time
Yes.
in talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I'm with you 100% on this. Having worked in HR for many years, I fully see the importance. And I think when it clicks for senior leadership, then you have a great pattern and rhythm and like great
Yeah.
rituals when it comes to
Yes.
performance.
Yes.
Although I've also worked in organizations or worked for organizations where it just feels like you're pushing a sledge uphill. Why do you think that leaders, you tend to get the sigh of, oh, it's performance review or talent review time? Why do you think leaders struggle to prioritize time or find time for talent reviews and conversations about talent?
I think it's the lack of understanding that, again, that the impact it might have. I also think it is in our corporate lives and in our personal lives, right now, we struggle to carve out a bigger chunk of time to really focus on something. It feels sometimes like it's a waste of time, right? So I think it's very difficult for us to find that chunk of time where you can sit down, where you can think something through, when you can think about different scenarios, when you can talk to other people. Sometimes we dedicate a few hours or a full day to a talent review session. That might sound like a lot of time investment. I think the best way to convince leaders that it makes sense is making it happen, and then obviously seeing the results. But to make it happen, I think the most important thing is to get your CEO on board. They have to be, ideally, the biggest promoter and the biggest believer in the talent review. Otherwise, it is going to feel a bit like you're pushing an HR thing.
Yeah.
To those very, very full plates already.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, you touched on it a moment ago around sometimes having a whole day to do these types of things. How would you see a really solid talent review process running? Like, what does good process look like to you? What have you implemented?
I like that you used the word process rather than session, because I think this is what it should be. It should be a continuous process rather than a one-off, I don't know, once a year or something like that, when you get the leaders together and talk about it. For me, the ideal talent review is a process that has different things happening throughout the year, right? So you have that session when everybody prepares for the session, we have the conversation about the people, but then things happen afterwards as well. There's thinking after the session. The leaders need to come back and they say, oh, I thought that maybe I should be doing this, and then I will do this. What do you think? Okay, let's implement this. Let's see how it works. So it cannot be just a one-off. It has to be a continuous process. And then it somehow gets into their minds, right? They start having it as part of their almost working schedule, right? Thinking about their teams, thinking about their people. And it becomes easier with time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was thinking then when you said that about the nature of performance reviews and the over reliance sometimes on HR, and how actually the accountability should, more so sit with those who are line managing or running departments and functions to really be investing in improving performance and those types of things. Have you seen anything in industry or any organizations that are like sharing that accountability really well? Are there any, I suppose, operational tactics that you would recommend around ensuring that there's a level of responsibility that goes towards managers?
I think you're very right about sharing that responsibility and that accountability. We, I think training managers, people managers, your everyday people manager, so to say, training them, giving them the tools, the understanding of how important performance management, reviewing their talent, giving feedback is. I think that's one of the most important things. I think operationally, having those trainings across the year and not only 2 weeks before we go to the annual performance review and everybody needs to rush and, put the ratings in. So constantly reminding managers about the importance of having conversations with their people, of giving feedback, having regular check-ins, adapting goals. Goals change during the year. They're never the same, right? When you think about them in January, it's never the same thing in November, right? I do believe in the power of regular training. And I also believe that people managers are almost the most important, if you can say that, group of people within the organization in terms of there is a ripple effect. So if you train the people managers in doing something right, then it kind of ripples through the organization and everybody else learns how things should be done. So that would be my recommendation.
Nice. I think that's really important as well. They are, if you're in a management position, you really are that middle ground between senior leadership and
Yes.
those that are more individual contributors, etc. And so the importance of getting things right for them is it's profound, really. I wonder, you mentioned continuous feedback, continuous conversations. I am also a big believer in the idea of this continuous development cycle. However, I've spoken to so many HR leaders that, want this over here, but end up, still doing this cyclical review process because it's actually really hard to move away from that if all of your managers aren't on board with this regular piece, because it's almost a way for us to say, okay, well, we've at least ticked that box for everybody in the organization. So what's your view on the continuous development versus specific, annual or biannual review cycle debate?
There is a debate. I agree with you. I think we should marry them.
Yes.
I think we should marry both. And I think probably the hybrid model is the best approach. Because you're right, people, we probably need regular annual reviews because of, salary planning or budgeting, right? And I also think that we need them because people like to tick the box. They do like to have that feeling that something had a closure, and it helps us. I think it helps us, appreciate the effort. It helps us celebrate the wins. So it's not necessarily only a bad thing to have those big annual reviews, but at the same time, we should be marrying them with the continuous development throughout the rest of the year. No annual review should be a surprise for anybody, really, right? Those conversations should be happening during the year. Things change so quickly that we shouldn't be leaving things to the end of the year to talk about them. So I really think the hybrid approach, rather than
one
having
or the
a
other
fight between the two. Yeah. I do think that the hybrid approach is probably what I would recommend.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I have this ideology of moving away from the more specific annual cycle.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. It can feel like a lot of burden as well. I think what I have seen is in most of the organizations, the annual review happens the end of the fiscal year. Makes sense, but it's also a very busy time for the whole organization. So if you are being asked to go through the review while you are closing the year, doing the audits, chasing your clients for the last minute sales, etc., it can be quite difficult, and you might even question the quality of that.
Yes.
So again, I think marrying the two and trying to spread it more across the year would be my goal.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, we talk quite a lot about talent reviews, and they can be challenging enough in an organization where everybody's in one place or one region. And your experience is largely working globally, remotely. So, how do you go about making a talent review successful in a remote workforce or in a global setting?
I do get this question quite a lot. You're right. I've worked for international organizations, always geographically spread. It really is very similar to what you need to do when you have every single person in the same office every single day. Maybe the logistics need to be slightly different, but the focus should be on my mind. It should be on preparation, making everybody understand what we are going to do and why we're doing this, what the impact is going to be, giving them enough information prior to that so that they know what they need to do, how they need to do it. And then I think for talent review sessions, you can do it face to face in real life. You can also do it virtually if you are not able to bring all the leaders together in one room. But the person who runs the show has a very, very important task to keep everybody up track and to make sure that these conversations are meaningful, because sometimes they can turn into defensive conversations, or people can lose track. And it's very important to make sure that everybody comes out of that conversation with a feeling that they discussed something important, that they can then use it and improve something in their team.
It's important, isn't it, that everybody feels like there's purpose to these conversations. I think you're right. And
Yes.
you touched on defensiveness in terms of feedback there, and it got me to thinking that when you work globally and remotely, there's a lot of cross-cultural differences in terms of how individuals like to be performance managed, like to give and receive feedback. How do you manage those differences when you're approaching these performance conversations?
It is a challenge. You're right. People are very different in general. And then we have those cultural differences that sometimes can be pretty big between different regions. I believe it's important to establish a common baseline, right? So we're going back to the training, where we would like every person to understand what and why we are doing it, right? So I think that common baseline helps a lot, but also training about those differences, right? So training about how that there's no one way of giving feedback, right? Or having those conversations, that there might be different ways of approaching different people. And suddenly that from cultural differences, we basically move to people are very different. Every person is very different, right? and how people managers in their everyday work, they really need to understand their teams, they need to understand their people, they need to understand what moves every single person. It will be different, what motivates them, what makes them talk, how to make sure that they feel safe, that they feel happy to share, that they feel open to feedback. And those ways can be different with different people. So there is a lot about cultural differences, I agree. But again, it just comes back to the fact that every person is different.
Yes, I really like that you took that question back to almost the first principles of management, right? It doesn't really matter where someone comes from, or culturally how aligned they are with somebody else. You have to figure out the way that they work and operate. So yeah, that's a really interesting answer, and it makes a lot of sense. So I like that.
I can also add that what I have seen work, and what we try to do, again, sometimes very challenging, having people all over the globe and different time zones. But what I have seen work is also mix the groups when you deliver the training, right? So if you could mix people from different regions, from different cultures, from different sensitivities, different ways of doing things in one training, in one group, then it helps to be able to hear those voices, right? And actually realize, oh, they do it differently. I have a person on my team who's from there. So maybe actually I should be trying something different to reach out to them. So that if possible, again, not always possible, but if possible, I think that's a very good idea.
Yes, I like that. I think I like that as well. And then I think something that always plays on my mind is that no matter how hard we try to avoid biases in these approaches, there are certain biases that creep in, particularly when you're having conversations perhaps about top performers or promotions around, I suppose, those that are in closer proximity to the senior leadership team, or those who have recently done something, recency bias, done something that's quite impressive.
Yeah.
In a remote setting, how do you make sure that those that are not always obvious get seen?
It is a very very good question, and it can be a really big challenge. And again, it comes back to trading and to process, right? So when we have a talent review, we have to talk about everybody that's in scope, so to say, right? So if we're talking about a certain level, we need to talk about everybody. And we need to talk about people that maybe not everybody knows, right? The talent review itself is a great opportunity to exchange that feedback and to hear from others what they might think about these people. So talent review already breaks those silos between the different functions or between the different types of employees, so to say, employees that see each other very often or employees that are seen a bit less. I think it's also important to think about how your organization is structured. And if it is structured in a remote first or hybrid way, then be very conscious about how to act, to design these processes accordingly to how the organization is structured. I think one thing that is very useful, or I found it very useful, is to have internal communication channels where we share achievements of different people with the rest of the organization. And it sounds like a small thing, but then you have this channel. There is a piece of news coming up about somebody who had a win in a particular country, and then suddenly everybody in the organization knows. Maybe they have never seen this person before, or they rarely see them, but thanks to that, we know that something like that happened. Another thing is having internal recognition programs. So teams that work together, but they work remotely, they also have a channel where they would appreciate work of somebody else. And then again, the rest of the organization see that, right? So that helps us see what other people do without necessarily being sitting next to them, right, at a desk in an office.
I think you're right. Public praise, opportunities for recognition, spotlighting good work. I think they're all really solid practices, and I can particularly see how that would be advantageous in a remote or more dispersed workforce as well. I have to ask, I'm going to go slightly off talent review topic, but still on trend with the remote and global setup, because I hear this conversation being had all the time in the HR leadership space. How do you build connections well across different hubs? What's the secret sauce?
This is a very, very good question. And you're right, it happens so much. We hear a lot from our employees how much they value the flexibility. You know, it's very important. It's one of the most important things for them. But at the same time, they do want the connection. Of course they do. We all want a connection, and we all know that it's much better to work with people that we know, and that the results are much better. So again, I don't think you need to kill one to have the other. So so they can coexist, and you have to design specifically for that. We have done a lot of work on internal communication. Again, I come back to the importance of that. Internal communication of sharing what's going on in the organization, in the different departments, etc. Also, we designed space and time for leaders to spend some time with the people, to be able to answer questions from the employees, and in different settings. So some people prefer to ask questions at a town hall, at a big town hall event, but some people prefer smaller setting, maybe a coffee with your CEO, where you can have a bit of a more intimate conversation, if you wish. So those things proved to be very successful, and people felt that they are more connected, and that they are closer to people that they wouldn't normally meet in person very often. So that worked really, really well for us. And then whenever we do get together in person, making it very purposeful. So we get together to work on a particular project. We get together to have a training. We get together to go visit a client together, or we get together to socialize, but not get together to be staring at a screen in the same office, right?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Purposeful connection and meetings, I can see would certainly drive connection forwards in a remote setting. I can't believe that we are almost at time, so I'm just going to ask one last question of you before I let you go. What advice would you give to a HR leader who is starting to set their talent review process up from scratch tomorrow?
I think, first of all, get your CEO on board. We know it might be difficult sometimes, but if you manage to do that, everything will be easier. So that's definitely the first thing to do. And then get your senior leaders to understand what you're planning to do and why you are doing it. What is the impact? The impact of what the talent review can bring to the organization. You might want to have individual conversations with every single leader, senior leader in your organization, to make them feel comfortable about the process, to make them understand why we're doing it. I think that's the best help that you can get. Let them run it, support them in running it, but let them run it. It's their process.
Yes, leadership buy-in and accountability. Let them do it for you.
Exactly
I love
that.
that. Well, thank you so much, Aleksandra. It's been a pleasure chatting to you today. You've gave some really interesting insights around talent reviews and remote working, and really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I have really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Louise.